Welcome to Community Watch, and today we're having a fascinating conversation with Mitchum. So stay tuned. Community Watch starts now.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, brother, and how are you?
I'm all right. You're looking good as always.
Oh, I try. I'm trying to keep up with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm gonna do the fist bump. So today we're very excited to have back with us again Gary Mitchum Reeves. Mitchum, how are you?
Hello, guys. I'm fine, thank you. Good to be back with you.
Well, for the very few folks in our area who do not know Mitchum, he is the star of his own podcast, which is called Mitchum. And if you have not heard it, you need to get that podcast and listen to some of those amazing stories. And Mitchum was also featured, or his case was featured on the Undisclosed podcast. Mitchum was found guilty of murder and served that time, but is fighting to clear his name. And on that Mitchum podcast, one of the things that impressed me so much was just your gift to tell stories. And you did spend some of those episodes talking about early days in Rome. And I think many people who live here now would be really quite amazed to hear some of those stories about what Rome was like back in the 50s and 60s. So tell us a little bit about those days, because I know you had a, I guess, career is the right word, for a time as a bootlegger. How does one get into that business?
Well, let me clear one thing up first. My parents were the best parents a person could ask for, and how my life ended up the way it did, it was no fault of theirs. They did the best they could do, but they had me late in life. They were like 46 years old when I was born, and I had four older brothers and a sister. And those three older brothers were in World War II. One saw action with Patton. That one, Brother Doyle, when he got out of service, and I had a good childhood. I mean, I had a short childhood, but it was a good one. I had good memories of Rome at that time with the fairground and stuff like that. But Mama, after she had me, I had to go stay with my aunt. She almost died, postpartum depression. And so my aunt, her son was named Flick Reeves. A lot of people might remember Flick. He had Fifth Avenue Cafe beer joint. And at that time, Rome was dry for liquor, but there was a lot of beer joints around here. And on Fifth Avenue, I can remember when those streets were still brick right in there. You had the Rome Bar and Grill across the street, had Fifth Avenue. So I stayed with Flick a lot, and he would take me to the races, at the Chilio races. He had a stock car out there, and he taught me how to bet on the stock car. He said, "Don't bet on mine; it ain't gonna win." And I had a lot of good memories with Flick. So Brother Doyle was in the liquor business, and as I got a little older, I was maybe 8, 10 years old. He and another guy would come in from Eastern Hill with a load of moonshine, and they had stash locations out off the Kingston Highway. So I would go with them to stash it and help hide it. And I got to, my brother Doyle could find liquor hid. You could just be riding down the dirt road and he'd say, wait a minute, stop right here. And there'd be some liquor stashed out there. Man, he could find that stuff. So when their stash got low, and everybody did this, you would kind of borrow from the other stash, from the other folks. And sometimes you paid it back. You just knew who to borrow from, who not to borrow from. There were some people that'd be very dangerous to do. But however, fast forwarding, by the time I was 14 years old, of course, I learned how to drive a car when I was about 10. Well, I was delivering the liquor to their customers. And at that time, you had the Scants Corner area. There was several bootleggers there, and had a guy named Hambone Pierce out on Carrier Springs, Mamie Brown out on Carrier Springs. And then you had all the clubs, private clubs that they, we delivered bonded liquor to those people. But at 14, I had a driving license that showed I was 18. Back then, you didn't have your picture on your driving license. So it was pretty easy to do. 14 years old, I'm running moonshine on those backcountry roads. Had a lot of, man, you had just places out there in the rural areas where there'd be a pinball machine on the front porch and a jukebox in the living room. And I really enjoyed my job. I enjoyed doing it. Later on, I kind of graduated from that. I did that for several years. But then I graduated to, I guess you'd call it the big time. We're running moonshine to Detroit, Michigan. Truckloads of moonshine. And
now, by a truckload, you mean like
a U-Haul.
Okay.
Yeah, my brother Doyle, as he got me going in it, really, in the liquor business, but he kind of backed off of it and was working in Marietta, Georgia, at a U-Haul rental place. So by then, though, I had gotten on into it. I went a lot further in the business than he did. So as I got to going into Detroit, we would go to Dayton, Tennessee, and get a load of liquor right from the source and take it to Detroit. My first trip to Detroit was in a blizzard. Everything was off the road. But when you got 400 or 500 gallons load of liquor on a U-Haul truck, you can't stop. So we slid on into Detroit on that first load. Now, this was my first time. And these guys meet us. Look, fellas, I tend to get off course. I'm done got out of Rome. Y'all want to hear about
That's
Rome?
right. We're in Detroit now, so
You stay in Detroit.
Let's see what happens in Detroit. We'll get back to Rome after that.
All right. So now the guy I'm with, he's done this before, but it was my first trip. So this big car meets us in Detroit, and this was like 1967, I think it was. They had some riots there. It was before Martin Luther King was killed, but they were still rioting in Detroit. Some buildings were still burning, man. So we have this big car meets us with these guys, and they're armed, shotgun. One of them had a machine gun, and they lead us through Detroit. We get on to the Canadian border to a warehouse, and they stand guard while we unload all this liquor. So there was then we go back to the guy who ordered the liquor. He lived, we went back to his house, and we got to go down into a basement to collect our money. You asked me, was I scared? I try to say I wasn't, but you just don't know what's going to happen when you're walking down into a basement in a strange place with these folks. Well, we get down into the basement, and my goodness, he's got a bar down there. I mean, it's just like going into a bar. But they love that white liquor up there, and he would sell that by the shots out of his place. So once we got in there and got inside the basement, I got real comfortable. And they said, "You want a drink?" And I said, "I want about a dozen of it." So it was cool. We collected our money, slid back into Georgia, and made several more trips up there in better weather. So now I'm back in Rome.
One second. How old were you at that time?
See, by then I was probably 18, 19 years old.
Oh my goodness.
But you got to understand, I started running moonshine in Rome on these back roads when I was 14. Well, you grow up pretty fast when you're doing that. So I grew up real fast, and I had 4 older brothers. I kind of was trying to catch up with them. So I lived real fast.
Let me ask, because you mentioned earlier that you also, I mean, you dealt in moonshine, but also in bonded whiskey. Where did that come from?
Atlanta, Chattanooga. The liquor store, Rome being dry, I think at the time you might have been allowed to have like 1/5 or 1/4 of liquor in your house or on you at the time. But we had a certain liquor store in Atlanta we could go to, and see, they were actually not supposed to sell you over a certain amount. Well, we went down there to get a truckload of liquor. Now, it was pints and half pints, bourbon and blend. Life was really simple then. Most of the bootleggers, a pint of blend or a pint, they sold blend or bonded. And it would be something like Early Times or Heaven Hill or, not good quality liquor. $5 a pint and 2.5 for half a pint. And everybody's prices was the same at that time. So you'd go down to Atlanta and pick up a trunk load of liquor and cases of pints and half pints. And I delivered for several different ones that I would pick it up for. I enjoyed doing that too. I really liked, of course, I was a kid. It was exciting in some ways. I was in a few car chases. Quite a few car chases, but I never got caught.
But the whiskey would be delivered to individual. Would they go to the beer places, or would they go to individual homes?
I delivered to people who were bootlegging. I would take, let's say, 4 or 5 cases of bonded and blend mixed up in pints and half pints, and deliver that much to them. I'm going to use one that was well known, which was Mamie Brown. Mamie Brown out of the Cavity Springs Road. She was a well-known bootlegger. And one thing about Mamie, she wouldn't sell to anybody if they looked like they were underage, and if they were drunk, you wouldn't go get any liquor from her. So people like her sold it out of their house. Now, she didn't have some of the places you could go to that bootlegged, and you could go there on a Sunday, and they'd have the jukebox, and you could buy the shot and partake of everything that was going on, maybe a poker game. People just having fun, place to go and drink.
Well, we've got to take a little break here, but we've got a lot more time to hear stories, so do not go away. We'll be right back.
For 50 years, Georgia Highlands College has been a community that takes charge. At GHC, we have a mission provide access to an outstanding education, meeting the career needs of the region, and helping our communities thrive. Every student we graduate becomes a celebration we never forget. We are more than Chargers. We are Chargers taking charge for 50 years and beyond.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we're having a conversation with Mitchum Reeves about Rome back in the 1960s. And I gather that, from what you're telling us today and what we've heard on your podcast, Mitchum, that there were beer establishments all over in Rome in those days. Is that right?
Yes. When we were doing the Mitchum podcast, I started, and we would tell those stories. I would tell those stories as things come back to me. So anyone who wants to listen to that, you don't have to listen to it in any order. It just as I remembered things, and so I started remembering all the beer joints in Rome at one time, everywhere. All of the count, I got them written down somewhere, and they was way over 100 or more. And so most of those beer joints, a lot of action going on at some of them, and they could only sell beer, but some of them would sell liquor there on this establishment. You had to be, they had to know you real good because they could lose their beer license. But most of the clubs, the private clubs around, I could tell you about one out on Highway 27. It was well-known steakhouse, actually, De Primus Steakhouse. You could take your own liquor in there, take a fifth of liquor, quarter liquor, whatever, and they would sell you a setup. In other words, they would sell you you pay for the glasses and ginger ale or whatever you're using to make your drink with, and that's how they did made pretty good doing that. So most of the clubs were private clubs, and if you belonged to them, and actually most of the clubs were where the authorities could go, lawyers, judges, doctors, those kind of people, and they could go there. And of course, these people paid for protection. My people, we had a club that we belonged to, and we called it the Tree Club. Bunch of trees out there in the yard. It was out in the country, so we could go there, and you could get shots of moonshine. You could buy beer on Sunday, and I got time to tell you a quick little story about that, or you want me to?
Sure.
So me and my brothers would go there a lot. The man, I tell this story on the podcast. He was a blind man, and he had a pinball machine on the front porch, and you couldn't beat him playing the pinball machine. Man, I don't know how he did it, but he was good at it. But he also had some pretty daughters, so I like to go there on Sundays, and sometimes I'd take him some moonshine, and I always liked it when I had to lay over. If we knew the cops were circling the roads or whatever, then I'd have to wait there a while before I could go on to the next stop. And I kind of always hoped they would be circling the roads to give me a reason to stay there for a while. So we had a friend of ours who had gotten out of the penitentiary, and he was back in Rome. He said, "You guys know a club we could go to it, get a drink and relax?" I said, "Yeah, we're members. We belong to one. It's called the Tree Club." He said, "Well, I don't have a tie. Can you get me in?" "Yeah, we know them real good. We'll get you in. Don't worry about that." So when you drive up to this place, old house, and then there was a muddy driveway with mud holes in the driveway and cars turned over on their side. And we get in there. He said, "This place don't look too clean." I said, "Well, just wait till you get inside." And we get inside, and he knew where we were going now. So he was taking a shot of liquor in the kitchen, and a goat ran through him and almost knocked him down in the kitchen. It was that kind of place. But he had a good time.
But that was a club?
It was a house. These people lived there.
Okay.
And we told him it was our private club that we belonged to. We're just leaving. He found out real soon he didn't have to worry about a time. He had to worry about being able to not get knocked down by a goat.
Now, I know you probably get tired of telling these stories, but I think we would be remiss to not ask you about at least a couple of houses of prostitution that were fairly well known in the area.
Sure. Well, you're talking about Peggy's, and Mabel's was the most well-known ones. Peggy's being more known than Mabel. And Peggy was actually our neighbor. My folks, we lived close to her up by the fairground. And she was a business person, good lady. I mean, she took good care of her people. I delivered some bonded liquor to her a few times, sold her a diamond ring one time. And my pop, after he retired, he did carpenter work and paint houses. Well, Peggy owned a lot of real estate up and down. East First Avenue then was a 2-lane that went straight to the fairground up that way. She had a lot of houses there. And Pop did a lot of remodeling work on those houses. And when I was a kid, I worked with him on that some. There's a short story there of one time we went by to get paid. And she had a parking lot that kind of up above her house. Her house was on the corner of Chambers Street and East First. And Chambers Street was well-known bootleggers up in there. So I'm waiting in the car on Pop, get the money. He was gone a good while. I'm thinking, okay, they must be really busy in there. They ain't got time to pay it. But I think the check was a little short of what she owed us. I guess I better not go into that anymore. But anyway, yeah.
You know what? You get the impression that Rome was, it just seems to compare it today, a lot of activity, a lot of illegal activity in Rome, and that was just part of the daily experience in the area. And was that, from your memory, was it always that way when you were growing up?
It was for me. My brother's mom and pop lived out in the country, what we call out in the country. They lived out off of past Blue Pond Church out that way. So my brothers were raised up in the country, but I come up in the city and came up a little bit different. At that time, it seemed like, man, there was so many people. They just wanted to fight. There were some people some of these beer joints you go to, and if they didn't have anybody to fight, they'd fight each other. It was always this. All of them wasn't that way, and then, but the ones that were, and I never liked to fight. Trust me, I didn't. But I had to learn real young, early age in Rome at that time. The one thing you didn't do, you didn't back down. So if you were challenged to a fight, and I was challenged a lot, and sometimes I would just hope, gosh, I know he's going to whip me, but I hope he gets real tired first. But you go ahead and fight. I mean, it was just the way it was. So yeah, the beer joints, a lot of stories of knockdown, drag-outs, cutting, shootings. And back to the brothels, you had the red light district, which was down in called Clemensville, off of Old 27. And the houses that had a red light was a brothel. I delivered liquor there to those folks. So being brought up in that, my cousin being in that business, as I said, he had the Fifth Avenue Cafe. He had 12th Street bar, and he had Fifth Avenue, Callahan Street beer joint. So I was with him a lot. And at 12th Street, you had Buddy's Barbecue. Now, there've been a lot of people that's going to remember Buddy's Barbecue. The black guy had the best barbecue in the world. And he had a place, okay, we're talking 1950s, late 50s. He had a place in the back for white people to go. You could go to Buddy's place and get you a barbecue sandwich, sit in the back. My cousin Flick had his place right across the street, but I liked Buddy's Barbecue better than I did his. So he would give me the money to go over to Buddy's place, and I good memories of going to Buddy's place and getting a barbecue sandwich and hearing that music. I love that music of the day, Fast Domino, Little Richard, and I just love that atmosphere, you know. So I got along well with all people on both sides.
And where was that? I mean, what?
12th Street, East Rome. 12th Street. It's is Anchored Up Cotton Mill was there at that time.
Yes, it's near the railroad tracks.
Yeah. Well, his Buddy's place was across the street from Flick's bar, which there's a street that goes beside it now. I can't remember the name of that street, but Buddy's was well known. Any of the guys that are still around will remember his barbecue. Had the best barbecue, best sauce, and I love the music that they played in there.
Yeah. Well, we've only got a minute or so left, so I know this is just kind of a taste of the stories that you tell on Mitchum podcast. So I encourage people who have not heard Mitchum that it's definitely still out there and well worth listening to. And I hope you will be willing to come back and talk some more. We can explore quite a few of those areas that you talk about in your podcast.
Maybe I can name all those beer joints for you.
I know we don't have much time, Doc, but listening to Mitchum, you just kind of redefine Rome. Like, you just wonder what happened to all those places and people, because I'm quite sure quite a few of them are still around, but and have a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah. Again, I was around much older people all my life.
Okay.
Brothers were older, and all my brothers are gone. But I'm sure there's still a few folks around that would remember some of these places I'm talking about.
Well, Mitchum, we're going to have to cut you short on that and do it on the next time. But we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. Maybe I could stay on track a little better. I'm getting better at this as I go along. So
you're doing fine. And thank you, and thank you all for being with us on Community Watch.